A truck driver from Los Angeles pulled off the highway somewhere in North Carolina. He needed gas. He found a small town with a main street that had a barber shop with a spinning pole outside. A diner with a handwritten chalkboard menu in the window. A sheriff's office that looked like a television set. Kids were riding bicycles with no helmets down the middle of the street. The comments were split between people saying this cannot be real and people saying I grew up somewhere like this and I did not realize it was gone until just now. That town was not a movie set. It was not a theme park. It was a real functioning American town where people live and work and raise families. And it looks almost exactly like it did in 1965. Something happened to America between 1970 and now. Most of us know it, but we cannot quite name it. The downtowns disappeared. The local shops closed. The diners became drive-thrus. The hardware stores became Home Depots. The barbershops became Great Clips. The town squares became parking lots. The main streets became highway. And somewhere in that transition, we lost something we did not even know we were losing. We lost the feeling of a place that actually felt like a place. But here is what most people do not realize. Not every town surrendered. Scattered across America are towns that somehow resisted the last 60 years of change. Not because they tried to be nostalgic, not because they built a tourist attraction, but because the modern economy simply passed them by. And what it left behind is something you cannot manufacture. Authenticity. We are counting down 12 of them. These are not restored historical villages with actors and costumes. These are real towns where real people still live the way small-town America used to function. Where the diner still serves coffee for $1.50, where the barber still knows your name, where the general store still exists, and where time moves at a speed that the rest of America forgot was possible. Like this video, if you have ever driven through a small town and felt something you could not explain, subscribe, because this channel finds the places that modern America left behind in the best possible way. Let us step back in time. Number 12. Seligman, Arizona, the birthplace of historic Route 66. Population, about 450 people. Seligman sits on the longest remaining unbroken stretch of the original Route 66 in America. When the interstate bypassed this town in 1978, it nearly died. But a local barber named Angel Delgadillo refused to let it go. He fought to preserve the Route 66 identity, and he won. Today, Seligman looks exactly like a 1960s highway town frozen in amber. Vintage gas station signs line the road. Classic car silhouettes sit on rooftops. The snow-capped drive-in has been serving burgers since 1953. The menu has not changed. The attitude has not changed. The mustard bottle that squirts water at you has not changed. Neon signs buzz at night the way they did when Elvis was on the radio. The Roadkill Cafe has a sign that says, "You kill it. We grill it." Pixar's Cars movie was directly inspired by this town. The character of Radiator Springs is essentially Seligman with animated eyes. The downside is Seligman is genuinely tiny. There are almost no services. The nearest hospital is over an hour away. Summer heat exceeds 110 degrees. And the town survives almost entirely on Route 66 nostalgia tourism. but as a time capsule of 1960s American highway culture. Seligman is the real thing. Number 11. Senoia, Georgia. 35 miles south of Atlanta. Population, about 5,000. Senoia's Main Street looks like it was designed by someone who watched every 1960s television show and said, "Build me that." Brick storefronts with hand-painted signs. A historic downtown where buildings have not been replaced since the mid-20th century. Wide sidewalks with benches where people actually sit. Local businesses that have been family-owned for generations. The town became famous as a filming location for The Walking Dead. But underneath the television fame is a genuine small town that has looked this way for decades. The veranda bed and breakfast is a historic, and that feels like stepping into another century. Holberg's restaurant has been a local institution for years. The pace of life in Senoia is aggressively slow. People wave at strangers. Neighbors know each other. The post office is a social hub. The downside is proximity to Atlanta is changing things. Suburban sprawl is creeping closer every year. Home prices have risen significantly since The Walking Dead made the town famous. And some longtime residents worry the character is being slowly replaced by commuter convenience. But for now, Senoia still feels like the Georgia small town that Atlanta forgot to absorb. Number 10. Bardstown, Kentucky. Named the most beautiful small town in America by Rand McNally. Population, about 13,000. Bardstown's Courthouse Square is the definition of 1960s small-town America. The courthouse sits in the center of town. Local shops surround it on all four sides. The Old Talbot Tavern has been serving guests since 1779. It is one of the oldest stagecoach stops in America. Still operating. Bourbon distilleries surround the town because this is the bourbon capital of the world. Maker's Mark, Jim Beam, Heaven Hill, and others are all within a short drive. The streets are lined with historic homes that families have lived in for generations. St. Joseph Cathedral is a stunning piece of architecture that dates back to the early 1800s. My Old Kentucky. Home State Park celebrates Stephen Foster's famous song right here in The annual Kentucky Bourbon Festival brings thousands of visitors. But outside of festival season, the town returns to a quiet pace that has not changed in decades. People sit on front porches in the evening. Kids play in yards. The local diner is still the place where everybody knows what everybody else is doing. The downside is bourbon tourism is changing the town. New distillery hotels and upscale restaurants are appearing. Home prices are climbing as Louisville residents discover Bardstown is only 40 minutes away, and the tension between preservation and progress is real and growing. Let's stand in the courthouse square on a Tuesday afternoon when the tourists are gone, and you will swear it is 1963. Number 9. Winslow, Arizona. Standing on a corner. If you just heard an Eagles song in your head, you already understand this town. Population about 9,000. Winslow sits on Route 66 in northern Arizona. The Eagles made it immortal with Take It Easy in 1972. But the town itself was already a time capsule by then. The La Posada Hotel is a masterpiece. Designed by Mary Coulter in 1930, it is one of the last great railroad hotels in America. Fully restored now, it feels like checking into 1955. The standing on the corner park has a bronze statue and a mural on the building wall. A red flatbed Ford sits permanently parked there. Route 66 runs straight through downtown with vintage motels and signs still intact. The Lorenzo Hubble Trading Post has been operating since the 1800s. The meteor crater is just 20 minutes west. Painted Desert and Petrified Forest National Park are nearby. The downside is Winslow has real economic challenges. Poverty rates are above average. Services are limited. The town survives heavily on nostalgia tourism and Interstate 40 traffic. And outside the preserved Route 66 corridor, parts of town show visible decline. But that corner, that song, that red flatbed Ford. Winslow locked a moment in time and it has never let go. Number 8. Wallace, Idaho. The entire downtown is on the National Register of Historic Places. The entire thing. Population about 780 people. Wallace sits in a narrow mountain valley in northern Idaho. Silver mining built this town in the 1880s, and the architecture from that era has survived almost completely intact. But what makes Wallace feel like the 1960s specifically is what happened when the interstate came through. The town fought the highway. They fought it for years. They did not want Interstate 90 running through their downtown. They eventually lost, and the highway was built above the town. But in fighting it, they preserved everything below. The Oasis Bordello Museum is a former house of ill repute preserved exactly as it was when it closed in 1988. The room keys are still on the hooks. The beds are still made. The drinks are still on the bar. Wallace also has a manhole cover in the center of town that marks the center of the universe. In 2004, the mayor declared Wallace the center of the universe, and since nobody has officially disputed it, the claim stands. The Sierra Silver Mine Tour takes you underground into an actual mine. The bars downtown have been operating continuously for over a century. The downside is Wallace is extremely small and extremely remote. Spokane is about 90 minutes west. Missoula is about 2 hours east. Winter in this Idaho valley brings heavy snow. Services are minimal, and the economy is fragile. But walking Wallace is downtown at night with the mine buildings lit up and the old brick storefronts glowing. You could tell me any decade, and I will believe you. Halfway through, and we have only scratched the surface. The top 4 on this list include a town with no cars allowed, a town with a population of 3, and the number 1 pick is a real-life Mayberry that inspired one of the most famous television shows in American history. Keep watching! Number 7. Eureka Springs, Arkansas, the town with no traffic lights. Population about 2,000. 0 traffic lights in the entire town. Not because it is tiny, because the streets were built into the Ozark mountainside and they twist and curve in ways that make traffic lights impossible. The entire downtown is a National Historic District. Victorian architecture from the 1880s covers the hillside. Buildings are stacked up the mountain with stone staircases connecting the streets. The Basin Park Hotel has been operating since 1905 and it is 7 stories tall. You can enter every single floor from ground level because each floor meets the mountain at a different street. Think about that. The Crescent Hotel sits on top of the hill and is called America's most haunted hotel. Natural springs throughout the town were once believed to have healing powers. People came from across the country to bathe in the water. The downtown shops sell handmade crafts, local art, and vintage goods. Not mass-produced souvenirs, but actual handmade items from local artisans. The trolley system runs through town in vintage cars. Music venues host live performances almost every night of the week. The downside is Eureka Springs survives on tourism. When tourists are not there, the economy struggles. Healthcare is very limited. The winding roads are beautiful, but challenging in winter weather. And the town's popularity has pushed some prices beyond what the 1960s vibe would suggest. But a mountain town with no traffic lights and Victorian buildings stacked up a hillside, Eureka Springs did not get stuck in the past. It decided the past was better and kept it. Number 6. Galena, Illinois. Population about 3,000. Galena's main street is so perfectly preserved that first-time visitors genuinely stop walking and look around in confusion. It does not look real, but it is. Brick commercial buildings line both sides of the street, unchanged since the 1800s. Ulysses S. Grant lived here before the Civil War. His home is preserved as a state historic site. 85% of the town's buildings are on the National Register of Historic Places. 85%! The DeSoto House Hotel has been operating since 1855. Abraham Lincoln once gave a speech from its balcony. Local shops sell handmade goods, antiques, and local products. Not a single chain restaurant on Main Street. Not one. The general store still has wooden floors that creak when you walk on them. The candy shop still sells penny candy by weight. The Galena River flows through town, adding natural beauty to the historic setting. Surrounding countryside is rolling hills and farmland that looks painted. The downside is Galena can feel like a museum on weekdays when tourist traffic drops. It is small enough that entertainment options beyond the historic district are minimal. Chicago is about 2.5 hours east. Winters are harsh, northern Illinois cold, and home prices have climbed as the town has become a popular weekend getaway destination. But standing on Main Street in Galena on a quiet morning, you are not in the 1960s. You are in the 1860s. And somehow, it still works perfectly in the present. Number 5. Dyersville, Iowa. If you build it, they will come. Population about 4,000. Dyersville is the home of the Field of Dreams movie site. The baseball diamond carved out of a cornfield in the 1989 movie still exists. People still come from across the country to play catch on that field. Strangers throw baseballs with strangers, and something about it makes grown adults cry. But Dyersville was a time capsule long before Kevin Costner showed up. The Basilica of St. Francis Xavier is a stunning twin-spired church that dominates the town skyline. It is one of only a few minor basilicas in the entire United States. Downtown Dyersville has locally owned shops and restaurants. The National Farm Toy Museum is here because this town is that kind of wholesome. Farming culture defines everything. The values, the pace, the neighbors. People leave their doors unlocked. Everyone waves. The grocery store cashier asks about your family by name. Friday night high school sports are the biggest event of the week. The entire town shows up. The downside is Dyersville is extremely small and deeply rural. Dubuque is about 25 minutes east. Cedar Rapids is about an hour and a half south. Entertainment is limited to what you can create within the community. And the winters are classic Iowa brutal. But walking out of the corn and onto that baseball diamond at sunset, with the farmhouse in the background and the corn rustling, it is not 1960s America. It is the idea of America that we all carry in our heads, whether we lived it or not. Number 4. Cape May, New Jersey. The entire town is a national historic landmark, not individual buildings. The entire town Population about 3,000 year-round. Cape May sits at the southern tip of New Jersey, and it has been a beach resort since before the Civil War. Presidents Lincoln, Grant, Harrison, and Pierce all vacationed here. Over 600 Victorian-era buildings have been preserved and painted in their original period color schemes. Gingerbread trim on every roofline. Wraparound porches on every block. Rocking chairs on every porch. The Washington Street Mall is a pedestrian-only shopping district. No cars allowed. Just brick walkways, local shops, and gas lamps. The Emlyn Physic Estate is a perfectly preserved 18-room Victorian mansion open for tours. Horse-drawn carriage tours clip-clop through the streets. The lighthouse at Cape May Point has been standing since 1859. Sunset Beach has a nightly flag-lowering ceremony that draws crowds every evening in summer. People stand in silence while the flag comes down and the sun sets over the Delaware Bay. It has happened every night for decades. The Cape May diamonds are actually quartz pebbles polished by the ocean. People collect them on the beach the same way people have done for over a century. The downside is, Cape May is expensive. This is not an affordable, hidden gem. Home prices are well above average. Tourist season from May through September transforms the town completely. Winter population drops dramatically and many businesses close. And New Jersey taxes are among the highest in the nation. But the time capsule quality of Cape May is undeniable. When the gas lamps come on at night and the Victorian homes glow in warm light, Top 3. And these are the towns where time did not just slow down. It stopped completely. 1 has a population of 3. 1 banned cars over a century ago and still will not allow them. And number 1 is the real town that inspired the most famous fictional small town in television history. Let us finish this. Number 3. Luckenbach, Texas. Population 3. 3. That is not a typo. 3 permanent residents. Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson made Luckenbach famous with their 1977 hit. Let's go to Luckenbach, Texas, with Waylon and Willie and the boys. The entire town is essentially a general store, a post office, a saloon, and a dance hall. Under ancient oak trees in the Texas Hill Country. The general store has been operating since 1849. The wooden floors are worn smooth by 175 years of boots. The dance hall hosts live country music multiple nights a week. Real country music, not Nashville pop country. Actual songwriters sitting on a stool with a guitar playing for people who are there to listen. There is no cell service to speak of. No Wi-Fi in the dance hall. No chain anything within miles. You sit under the oak trees. You drink a cold beer. You'll listen to someone play guitar. And you realize that this is exactly what entertainment used to be before screens replaced everything. The motto of Luckenbach is painted on a sign. Everybody's somebody in Luckenbach. The downside is there's literally nothing here beyond what I just described. No hotel in town, though. Lodging exists nearby in Fredericksburg. No restaurants beyond the general store. No services of any kind. It is a tiny, unincorporated community that exists purely as a cultural landmark. but is a place where the 1960s Texas honky tonk spirit never died. Luckenbach is not a town stuck in time. It is a feeling preserved in wood and music and cold beer under oak trees. Number 2, Mackinac Island, Michigan. No cars allowed. None. 0. Since 1898. Population about 500 year-round. You get to Mackinac Island by ferry. When you step off the boat, you step out of the modern world. Horse-drawn carriages are the primary mode of transportation. Bicycles fill the streets. The clip-clop of horse hooves on pavement is the soundtrack of daily life. The Grand Hotel has the longest front porch in the world. 360 feet of white columns overlooking the Straits of Mackinac. It opened in 1887 and enforces a dress code after 6 p.m. Jackets required 4 men in the dining room. The main street is lined with fudge shops. Mackinac Island fudge is legendary, and the shops still make it by hand on marble slabs in the front window. The entire island is a National Historic Landmark. Fort Mackinac sits on the bluff above town dating back to the Revolutionary War. Victorian cottages line the hillside with flower gardens and white picket fences. There are no traffic lights because there are no cars to manage. No exhaust fumes. No engine noise. No honking. Just horses, bicycles, and the sound of water against the shoreline. The only motorized vehicles allowed are emergency vehicles and snowmobiles in winter. A resident told a travel writer something that captures it perfectly. People visit and say it feels like going back in time. I live here, and I say it feels like everyone else went forward too fast. The downside is Mackinac Island is not cheap. Tourism drives everything and prices reflect it. Winter is brutally isolated with ferry service stopping when the straits freeze. Year-round living requires serious commitment to small island life. Healthcare means getting off the island. And the tourist season from June through September transforms the island into a crowded destination. But in the quiet of a weekday morning in October, when the last ferry has left and the horses are resting, and the fog sits on the water, Mackinac Island is not stuck in the 1960s. It is stuck in a version of America that existed before the automobile changed everything. And it chose to stay there. Number 1! And this is the one that started with a truck driver thinking he had time traveled. Mount Airy, North Carolina. The real Mayberry. Population about 10,000. Andy Griffith was born here in 1926. He grew up walking these streets. And when he created the Andy Griffith Show in 1960, he based Mayberry on this town. The barbershop, the diner, the courthouse, the front porches, the values. All of it came from Mount Airy. And here is what makes Mount Airy number 1 on this list. The town leaned into it. Not in a cheesy tourist trap way, in a genuine preservation of identity way. The Snappy Lunch Diner has been open since 1923. They still serve the pork chop sandwich that Andy Griffith ate. As a boy, the same sandwich, the same recipe. At a counter with swivel stools and a cook who knows every regular by name. The city barbershop inspired Floyd's barbershop from the show. It still operates. You can still get a haircut there. The chair is the same style. The conversation is the same style. Squad cars styled after the show's 1960s Ford Galaxy offered tours of the town. But here is the thing. Even without the Andy Griffith connection, Mount Airy would be on this list. Because the town genuinely functions like a 1960s small town. The downtown is walkable with locally owned shops. The hardware store is locally owned. The pharmacy is locally owned. The grocery store knows its customers. Neighbors sit on front porches in the evening and wave at people walking by. The Granite City Greenway Trail system winds through town along a creek. The Surrey Arts Council hosts live music and theater in a beautifully restored downtown theater. The autumn leaves in the Piedmont foothills surrounding Mount Airy are stunning. The Blue Ridge Parkway is just minutes away. Pilot Mountain rises dramatically nearby, creating a landmark visible from across the county. Home prices are remarkably affordable, with a median around $150,000. Cost of living is well below the national average. People move here not because of the television show. They move here because the town that inspired the show still functions the way the show depicted. Slowly, kindly, with front porches and handshakes and conversations that do not involve screens. A retired couple from Charlotte moved to Mount Airy 3 years ago. The husband told a North Carolina retirement forum something that captures it perfectly. We did not move to a tourist attraction. We moved to the town that the tourist attraction was based on. And the difference is everything. The diner is not pretending to be old-fashioned. It is old-fashioned. The barber is not acting friendly. He is friendly. The pace is not manufactured. It is just how people live here. Mayberry was not fiction. It was a documentary. And the town it documented is still here. The downside is, Mount Airy is small. Winston-Salem is about 35 minutes south. Charlotte is about 90 minutes. Job opportunities are limited. Healthcare requires driving to larger cities for specialized care. And some visitors find the Andy Griffith tourism overwhelming. But here is why Mount Airy is number one. Every other town on this list preserved building. Mount Airy preserved a way of life. The buildings matter, but what makes Mayberry feel like Mayberry was never the architecture. It was the barber who knows your name. The diner where the cook remembers your order. The neighbors who wave from their porch. The sheriff who walks the street instead of driving. The idea that a town can function on trust and familiarity and simple human decency, that is what the 1960s represent in our collective memory. Not the decade itself, with all its real problems, but the small town ideal that the decade symbolized. Mount Airy did not just preserve that ideal, it is still living it. 12 towns. From an Arizona highway to a Michigan island. From a Texas dance hall with 3 residents to a North Carolina town that became the most famous small town in television history. All real, all functioning. All proving that the version of America we think is gone is actually just hiding in places we stopped looking. Here is the question that matters. Do you think these towns are stuck in the past? Or do you think the rest of us moved forward into something worse? Drop your answer in the comments. The past was better, and these towns prove it. Or the past is romanticized, and modern life is genuinely better. Like this video? If you felt something watching this that you cannot quite name, subscribe because this channel finds the places that remind us what we forgot. Hit the bell so the next one finds you. Because America did not lose its small towns. It just stopped visiting them. And they have been here the whole time. Waiting.